Hello, welcome back to the channel. Temperature's 88 degrees, or going to be 88 degrees today. I think right now it's about 85. Let's see. No, it's only 80. Feels like 85. And believe it or not, the temperatures are cooling. And it's been a brutal August. But now we're into September. And slowly but surely, the temperatures are stepping off, which is good. Which means I can get outside and do more work and more projects and not be falling out from the heat. That being said, like I said, it is going to get up to 88 today, and I don't want to be out here all day. So I already came out here and I planted a couple of sprinter boxwoods in the shade, as you saw in the beginning of this video, and I wanted to get those in the ground today because that area is in shade more and more, and I want them to get a good established rooting before winter. I have a couple of more sprinter boxwoods that I plan on planting up sometime soon, maybe later in the week. Again, I just want the temperatures to start cooling off a little bit so I don't fall off from heat stroke yet. I want to get them in sooner than later so they can get a good rooting so that they can survive whatever the winter has to throw at them. Again, I'm in growing zone 8A, but last year we got that crazy polar vortex-y thing that like froze everything north of Florida. I think even northern Florida got some of that, where they got freezing temperatures. Really crazy. And I mean really like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I got those planted. And the other thing I want to do today is trim back some of my privet, because it's getting over where it should be. I only want it to be about 4 foot high. And it's growing above that again. And I've already pruned it back pretty hard, I thought, earlier this year. I think it was around June. But here we are, early September. And it's grown almost about a foot in certain sections. So I want to give it another trimming, and hopefully that'll be it for this year. And I want more golden ticket privet, which is the privet that I grow here because it's non-invasive. So, and it looks pretty, honestly. I'll show you guys in a second. We'll see that in a second. But, so we're going to do today's, we're going to do a quick haircut on the privet. I do apologize for wiping my head here. I'm just hot and it's sweaty, and yeah, trying to keep the sweat out of my eyes. If you guys hear a lot of background noise, I do apologize. I try to edit a lot of it out. The town that I live in is doing some lawn mowing, and they gotta do their jobs. And so do I, because it's hot and I want to get this job done before it gets too hot. So let's start pruning some hedges. Right here, between the veg garden and the rose garden, I have my golden ticket privet. And the plan was, and still is to have a 4 foot hedge wrapping the entire rose garden. So I planted a bunch of these. And again, if you've been following along the channel, you see these and you see them grow. So I'm simply just going to try to trim these down to the 4 foot level today. I don't think I'm going to do any vertical pruning, just horizontal. So I'm going to prune these down a bit. But instead of just taking the clippings and throwing them away or into the compost pile, I'm actually going to put them in a bucket of water. And then we're going to try to propagate us some more golden ticket privet, because I want to use this shrub in a lot of other parts of the garden. All right, so now let's get pruning. And I'm not doing anything fancy today because these privets are not at their final stage. So it's basically a rough cut just to bring them down to the rough height, right? That's what I'm going with. This is what I'm doing. All right, there we go. I took them down a notch because the fence height here is about 4 foot. So that's what I wanted to do. Bring them down to about that 4 foot level. I think I am going to do some vertical shearing. Yeah, because I want these to be trimmed in a more formal manner. And again, I'm not going to worry about getting them super tight today. I'm just trying to trim them up so that they don't look like a total mess. And it also, from my understanding, helps promote a little bit of growth, which is also a good thing. So let me get the vertical. I'm done basically. They look a little bit better. As the rose garden matures and as these fill up, the cuts will get finer and nicer and tighter. So, but again, I'm not worried about overall. I just kind of want to start getting them a little bit more under control, and you can kind of see where I'm going with the hedge here. I do have to do a little bit of cleanup here, which I won't bore you guys with. And you probably saw me, or maybe you saw me stuffing all of those branches that I cut off into a bucket. That bucket's full of water. And because they say that you should keep your cuttings moist or wet before you plant them up. So instead of trying to put each one in an individual jar or Ziploc bag or some sort of nonsense, I'm drowning them all in a bucket. It's unorthodox, but that's the way I roll sometimes. Let's go take those cuttings and start potting them up. They may be getting cooler, but it's still hot, as I said before. So here I am by the potting table, and I have a lot of cuttings already, but I need more because I have an acre and a half, and I have plans to have quite a lot of hedges. So let me show you some of the plants that I have already taken. Got a lot of spiders here. So this is a Japanese holly, at least I believe it is. Looks like a box, but if you look closely, the tips have little holly points. Grew this from a cutting a couple of years ago, and this will be getting planted out this fall along with the other 3 that I have next to it. I'm not 100% sure where I'm going to plant it yet, but I know it will be getting planted out. This is a golden ticket privet cutting that I took last summer, I believe. Doesn't matter, it was last year for sure, and it's grown on quite a bit. In fact, I think I'm going to plant this one up this fall, so probably in the next month or so, and that should allow it time to get a good rooting in and then take off like a bat out of hell next spring, theoretically. Here's another golden ticket. Now, it doesn't look like it's grown much beyond a cutting, but there are, trust me, there are a lot of new leaves on here. So it's growing quite a bit. And there's a few others on here. Now back over in the shade, or in the far end of the table where it gets shadier, is shadier most of the day, that's where I try to keep a lot of my new cuttings. So I observe the cuttings, and as the cuttings seem to be putting on a lot of new growth, and they're getting a little stronger, then I move them sort of out here to the sunnier part so they can get all the sunny goodness, and I can free up room down there for new cuttings, because the new cuttings, and again, if you guys think I'm wrong on any of this, or if you have any comments to add to this, please leave those comments below. But I feel that if the new cuttings are down in the shady area of the table, there's less stress to them, which then allows them to grow their roots on better. And once any plant has its roots really well established or grown out, it will grow and thrive much better. So that's my thinking there. So I'm going to take a few minutes here, do a quick little shuffle, make room for the new cuttings, and then we'll start potting up new cuttings. Okay, it's actually a little bit nicer in the shade. So I went through the table real quick. I found some in the back that were growing on. So now they're going to get moved towards the front. They'll get a little bit more sun. They'll put on a little bit more growth. And what will probably happen is either I will up-pot them and leave them outdoors for the winter, or if they get large enough, which I doubt many of these will this fall, I would plant them out. But more than likely next spring, a lot of these will start going out into the ground, because by then they will be large enough. They'll be putting on enough growth. So I will continue to monitor my cuttings. Again, this is what I'm thinking. This is not a how-to, by the way. There are lots of other better YouTubers out there that do better how-tos. This is just my thinking, and this is what I'm doing. If you have any thoughts, suggestions, ways to improve, or opinions, drop them below, please. That's what YouTube made the comment section for. What I have here in front of me is a number of pots that had cuttings in them, and those cuttings didn't take. Not every cutting will take, as I've learned from experience. And again, if you watch many other YouTube channels, they will more than likely tell you the same exact thing. So instead of wasting the potting soil that's already in these, I'm just going to turn around, take my cuttings, and then pot them up into these, and we'll see what happens. The one thing I have learned, which I should have learned earlier on, is instead of putting one cutting in one pot, put 3 to 4 cuttings in a pot. And this way, either one will survive, two, maybe all 4 will survive. Then you'll have the horrible problem of trying to divide all 4 surviving cuttings, you know, as they all sort of root together. Oh no, woe is me. But you may, if you put 4 in a pot, you may only have 1 survive, and that's fine. At least you have 1 cutting. If you put 1 cutting in a pot and it dies, well, it's just now you've wasted that pot and you have to go reuse. It's a thing. Put more cuttings in a pot. You never know what's going to survive or not survive. Unless it's a weed of some sort, pretty much nothing's ever guaranteed. Let me stop prattling and start planting up. It's so hot. The leaves are already wilting. And what I'm going to do is take off all the leaves and take off a little bit of top new growth. I'm just going to leave 2 leaves. And I'm going to cut below a flower node or a leaf node, right? That's what they tell you to do. Something like that. I don't know if that's going to be in focus. Is that in focus? All right. So that's what I've done. Hopefully this is in focus. And the reason I cut the leaves sort of in half is that this way the plant puts less energy into trying to produce or trying to support those leaves. I mean, you've just taken away its entire support system. It's an amputee. So if you reduce, the more you reduce on the cutting, the better it is for long-term survival. That kind of thing. Am I thinking right? I'm going to do another one. I'm going to cut right below a leaf node. Take that out too. I'm going to leave a little bit of new growth, not a lot of new growth. I don't know if I even should leave any new growth. But there we go. Next one taken. I'm going to leave a couple extra leaves on this one. And I'm going to cut it there. So it's about a 2-inch stem. And when I'm putting them in the pot, I'm putting them basically right up to the leaves. I don't know if I should be doing that, but that's what I'm doing. And that's what I've done with many of my other cuttings. So it seems to work, so I'm going with it. So this is what my pot looks like. So I've got my cuttings in there, and with a little luck and a label, and with a little luck, they'll survive and take off. Now the soil is already moist from this morning's watering, so I'm not going to worry too much, but they will get watered again this evening. I want to put it back in the shade. Again, less stress on the plant itself because it's already stressed out enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take some more cuttings. Now that first batch, you may have noticed, I did not use rooting hormone. I'm going to take another batch now, and I'm going to use rooting hormone. And if I remember, I'll label the pot, but I probably won't remember because it's really hot out and it's cooking my brain. But let me do those cuttings, and then I will show you the rooting hormone that I use and do. Okay, so what I'm going to do, and I've been doing this, is I'm just going to gently scrape the bark off of the stem here down by the leaf node. I don't know if you should do this. I don't know if you want to do this, but this is what I do. Just a little bit. And then I'm using, this is not sponsored, but this is the rooting hormone I'm using. I've had this jar for years because apparently you only need a little bit. You don't want to use a lot of rooting hormone because that apparently leads to problems, or so I've been told. And apparently, which is also what you're supposed to do, is not dip the stem into the jar for reasons. If the plant's got some sort of bacteria or fungal, etc., now you've contaminated your rooting hormone. So, but this is what I do. And now there's a little bit of rooting hormone on there, and I'll take it and I will stick it into the pot. Rinse and repeat 800 times. Let me take a bunch of cuttings so I can get this wrapped up. So that's the process. And with a little luck, maybe, hopefully, cross my fingers and toes, at least half survive. I stated it last year, and I'm stating it again. I need a lot of privet hedge, and I need a lot of sprinter, and I need a lot of other plants. And it's difficult here in the United States, at least from what I've seen, to get wholesale, really cheap, small cuttings, as it were, bare root of things like, you know, boxwoods. If you like something like Baby Gem or Sprinter Boxwood or any of the named varieties, it's virtually impossible because those are produced by Monrovia and Proven Winners and Southern, what's the other one? Southern Plants or something along those lines. Either way, they don't want to sell anybody those plants. They want to ensure that the customer gets the finest plant. They don't want to risk giving you a small bare root and it dying or not surviving to fruition, or a customer planting a little 4-inch plant and going, oh, woe is me, it's not as big and as beautiful as it was in the pictures. They'd rather sell you a gallon size. I understand that, totally. But I don't have $1 billion and I don't have a sponsorship by anybody. Proven Winners, if you ever stumble across this video and would like to supply me with a couple of hundred Sprinter Boxwoods, you know my number, contact information below. Until then, I'm going to continue taking cuttings to grow on. So let me get to cutting. So now a couple of notes about the cuttings I'm taking and how I'm doing it. One is the medium that I'm using. I'm using potting mix. It's what works for me. Now, I have read and seen on the interwebs and in various books, you can use perlite, vermiculite, a mixture of perlite, vermiculite, and potting mix. You could use bark. You could use, I mean, there's like half a dozen things I feel that you could use to take your cuttings. And I have tried perlite, for instance, but I didn't feel like perlite was the solution or the answer for me. So I started using potting mix because everything seems to grow in potting mix. And I have had success. And I showed you some of those successes with the cuttings that I've previously taken earlier this year, last year, so on and so forth. And they're growing. So the advantage to me also is that once they start putting on growth, there are some nutrients within the potting mix, and I don't have to worry about feeding them. I can leave them in the potting mix for a period of time. If I want, I can fertilize while they're in that potting mix growing on, which I have done with several of them this year as they've gotten bigger. And then I can plant them directly from that pot out into the garden, unless they're in a pot of 3 or 4. For instance, there's 4 in this one. And right now, all 4, still early days, but I think all 4 might take it. So eventually, once they all start putting on enough growth, new growth, what I'll do is I will unpot them, pry them apart, pot each one individually into their own pots, and then baby them in their own pots for a short period of time, and then plant them in the appropriate time, probably spring or fall, whenever it's coolest and less stressful for the plant. The other thing I want to make a mention of, because I was watching Gardener's World the other night, last night I believe, and Monty Don, my favorite gardener, he, if you guys aren't familiar, Gardener's World is an English gardening program, and Monty Don is the main host. He's not an expert gardener, but the man's got close to 30 years, if not over 30 years of gardening experience, and that accounts for something. Anyways, he was taking a bunch of cuttings, and after he got done taking those cuttings, he then turned around and put a plastic bag over the cuttings to help retain moisture within the pot. I don't feel I need to do that here in Eastern North Carolina, growing zone 8A, because of the humidity in the air. We are so humid. Now, if I was taking a cutting, let's say the winter time, early winter, let's say, I might do that because the air starts getting much drier. But we're tail end of summer, we're getting into fall, air is still very humid. Like I said, it's supposed to get up to 88 today, and there's probably, let's check the humidity in the air. Weather app says the humidity is 65%. Now, I don't know if that's enough or what is enough, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty high. And again, a lot of the cuttings do survive, and they do pretty well. The main thing that I've found, and many of you expert gardeners out there are gardeners with a lot more experience than I do, because again, I'm a newbie, I'm figuring all this stuff out, is to keep that growing medium moist. And for me, again, the potting soil retains moisture better. So if I do miss a watering, it's probably not the apocalypse. I probably won't lose that cutting. I don't want to miss multiple waterings, but I do want to keep the soil moist. And that's also another reason putting a lot of the new stuff, or all the new stuff, under the shade, because the evaporation is less. So the new stuff can go out in the sun. It has more roots. The roots can dig around in the pot for more moisture. You can, again, I monitor these things and I see it. Does it look like it's struggling? Does it look like it needs more water? I will water if it needs more water, or I will move it up, pot it into a larger pot. These guys here are in pretty large pots already. But if I was not to plant these out this fall, I would possibly up pot them into a larger pot. I'd want to see, well, let's take a look at what they look like now. Hopefully I don't make a big mess. The roots are pretty good. It's not root bound yet. So that's a good sign. There were some pretty good roots on there. So it could survive in that pot for quite a bit longer. Again, I plan on planting them out this fall, so it's not going to be a problem. So, I think that's about it for today. I'm very hot. Actually, I'm going to do some more potting up, but I don't want to bore you guys more again than I already bore you. Where's Sophie? I know I left her out here someplace. She was hiding out in the shade. You know what? I can put you down on the table. There you go. Stand up. You're all right. She's unsure where she is. It's the advantage to a small dog. I can put him on top of the table. You're someplace you've never been before, huh? So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click that bell icon to be notified when I do post up a new video. If you see me putting up a video and you did not get notified, re-hit that bell, because sometimes YouTube does strange things because they're YouTube. This is what they do. Please tell your friends, families, loved ones, grumpy old guy across the street about these videos, about my channel, and feel free to share any and all of these clips or videos or whatever on your other social media platforms. For instance, you won't find me on Facebook. If you find a Growing the Green Finger on Facebook, it's not me. I don't like Facebook. I'm not on Facebook. Pretty simple. But you can share my videos on Facebook if you'd like. Tell your friends, families, etc. Hey, if you guys aren't big fans of YouTube, I have a alternative, and the name eludes me right now. Ultron, I'll leave the thing here. So you can go over there, subscribe to me over there if you'd like. Doesn't cost you anything, but it's an alternative to YouTube if you want to go check it out. Please check out all my links below. And again, feel free to leave a comment. I think Sophie's a little nervous being up on the table. Come here. What are you doing? Oh. And she's hot. So we're going to go back into I'm going to put her back in the air conditioning. I'm going to come back out in the heat and continue to pot up these cuttings. I'm going to catch you on the next one. Bye-bye.